friends, it's Caroline Maguire here to talk about all things friendship and ADHD. I wanted to really do something innovative and talk about Bridgerton. So we're going to watch Bridgerton season 3, episode 1. And there is so much that as an ADHD person, I can relate to. We're going to talk about awkward conversations. The character Penelope has a ton of awkward conversations, feeling like a wallflower and really struggling with how do I make conversation, navigate into the mix, talk and get to know other people. Eloise is stuck in the most boring conversation. We're going to talk about that and how do you steer conversations so they don't have to be boring. There is so much rich material here. So I cannot wait because I get to offer so many suggestions and we're going to watch a really fun scene.
You genuinely enjoy embroidery.
Of course I do. There's simply so much one can do with it.
For example?
Since you have asked. The stem stitch, tried and true. The straight stitch, running stitch, chain stitch. I like to read very much, but perhaps too much. My mama's always telling me to put my books down. Not that there is anything wrong with reading, of course. I'm not quite sure of her reasoning. Do you all like to read?
So what I love about this scene is both Pen and Eloise are having these incredibly awkward conversations. So Eloise wants to talk about something besides sewing and stitches. And she's not really doing what I call steering the conversation, where you actually try to help a conversation that is chit-chat more toward deeper subjects you're interested in. She's sort of having this conversation wash over her, and she's kind of having one of those moments. Eloise is like, really? Is this what we're talking about? And she's so clearly bored. And it just reminds me so much of us as ADHD people in a conversation. And the difference is Eloise isn't really realizing how she can do what I call steering, how she can navigate the conversation and sort of pivot it toward a topic that would be more interesting by asking people questions, by introducing new topics. And she's just so bored. And then Pen is so awkward. I love Pen. I think she's brilliant. I think she's so wonderful. And she feels so awkward at these balls. And we're seeing her really wishing she wasn't engaging in conversation.
Do you not have a favourite, Miss Eloise? The shift stitch.
I'm not familiar with that.
It is the one that shifts this conversation, perhaps something besides embroidery.
Eloise asked if we could talk about something other than embroidery. And here's my thing. You absolutely could. So if you were having a conversation and it was just about the weather in, modern times that we're living in, you could steer that conversation. They were giving it information about embroidery. She could have said something like this. Hey, how was your day? What are you reading? What have you been up to? She could have said that even in 18th century terms, but she doesn't because she's befuddled. She doesn't really know what to do. So the conversation I love because it just represents to me how we often feel about conversation. Now let's take a peek at Pen because Pen's having an equally hard time.
Forgive me, please, you were saying what by now?
I was going to say, perhaps we should take our leave, lest we remain too long and give Lady Whistledown something to write about.
Oh, poor Pen. They say, perhaps we should leave, lest we give Lady Whistledown something to talk about. And that was a early 1800s slight. They don't really want to be talking to her, and she knows it. You see the look come across her face. She's aware of it. Her conversation is very awkward, very stilted. Pen is brilliant, but she doesn't necessarily have confidence in herself. And I feel like confidence is so, so important. I think Pen is also different. This is another reason I chose this scene. I really, as a neurodivergent person, relate to someone who feels different. She's different. She loves to talk about books. She mentions, my mother says I talk about books too much, because in that time, she wasn't supposed to be reading as much as she was. She wasn't supposed to be as an intellectual as she was. And I relate to the fact and feel very seen by the fact that she is different. And I also wish I could sort of parachute in there and help her feel more comfortable. And then she's going to have a really great conversation about being a wallflower. So let's watch.
You really ought to take to the floor again.
Ought I?
Once one finds oneself on the wall, it is difficult to come off it. No matter what one does.
At least the wall is not asking what makes me tick.
Francesca is this other character. She's a Bridgerton, and she's so smart. She says, when one takes to the wall, it is hard to leave. I think that is a really brilliant assessment. And, there's this phrase that grandmas use, being a wallflower. And it really does come literally from this, from being on the edge and on the wall. And I think part of this is a very real thing, right? They're at this ball, which is very different from our lives, but it is a real thing. When you take yourself to the periphery, it is much harder to come back into sort of the fray, into the main dancing, into the main ball of life. And I really wish Penn knew my biggest hack, which is to have a job or a role. So if she had a role, if she had lined up multiple dances, it would be much easier for her to sort of fake it or to even just get into the mix.
You do not much like attracting notice, do you?
Not really. No.
Perhaps that does make you rare. Seems as though every Bridgerton was born to attract notice, in one way or another. I am different from my siblings as well. It can be difficult, can it not? I know. You are lucky for that. And you are lucky to have so much notice, even if it is trying.
They have this great conversation about how they're different than their siblings and they don't really like attracting notice. I think that there's something really important here. If you are not a person who likes to attract notice, if you like to fly under the radar, it doesn't mean you can't be part of the social fabric and interaction. And I think eventually in the series, Penn finds a way to have conversations, to be part of that interaction, to make her friendships her way. I always say we do friendships differently as neurodivergent people. And I think not wanting to be an extrovert, not wanting to be in the fray, right? Having differences there is totally great. I think the struggle for them was it wasn't allowed back then. You couldn't have different ways of being, but now we can. And so part of this scene really brings up for me that you can go to an event and not everybody has to have the same patterns, the same interactions, the same way of being. And that's why I love the hack of taking a lap. So instead of settling on the wall, walking around a party, saying hello to everyone, and then finding your people you want to be with, and then making a choice of what interaction you want to do. But I think it's like such a good articulation and visualization of this dilemma that people have where you don't necessarily want to cling to the wall, but what else can you do?
Are you well, Miss Featherington?
Yes, forgive me. Cold headache.
From the ice cream or from the very congenial looking miss with the sneer?
Do not worry. I have been the recipient of an untold number of withering looks. Hers was mediocre at best.
And why do I have the feeling that you, in turn, know how to make one wither, if you so choose?
Me? Well, I suppose... I did not. Excuse me, I might...
Oh, how mortifying. I'm so clumsy. My deepest apologies. It is a pity you did not choose something sturdier. Perhaps if you had not bought such cheap fabric, it would not have ripped.
And here we have the ultimate mean girl moment. Penelope is finally talking to someone who appreciates her observation, appreciates her personality, isn't looking for her to be different than she is. I think it's a real moment of acceptance. And this person comes and steps on her dress and humiliates her. And it's just such a mean girl moment. It is not necessary, and it's born out of jealousy and competition. And it is 100%, like so many of these bullying moments, is not about Penn. It is not about you. And this is how I want to kind of end and sum up. This is obviously a drama. It's not even like 100% historically realistic. It's so much fun, but it just reminds us some things are not about us And I really love the fact that somebody at the end of this ball, which isn't that successful for Pen, starts to appreciate Pen for who she is. And it's just a great reminder that there's always our people out there. There's always people who appreciate you for who you are. And that is what's been happening in this last scene. Pen is having a conversation with someone who appreciates her for who she is. So I love this. This is just the ultimate mirror to how we as neurodivergent people, when we're being social, feel. And I think it is just such a fabulous illustration of feeling like a wallflower, having awkward conversations, and the way that we can break out of that mold in our own way, not trying to twist ourselves into a pretzel and become someone else. And then at the very end, find appreciation for who we are. And that's all we really want, right? Thank you so much to everyone who stayed till the end. I love doing these reactions. Bye, friends.